Hi, my friends. I missed you. Today is chapter 37 with Mandy, and the last one, chapter 36, when we read, we learned about Mandy. So Mandy had a visit from Sue, and Mandy feels like she's going to come back to the orphanage soon, even though she does not want to have to go back to the orphanage. And then you guys all wrote letters to Ann and Bill asking them to keep Mandy and why you thought they should keep Mandy. You guys did a fabulous job with that. So this chapter is chapter 37. And in this chapter, Mandy actually meets Jonathan, their son, Ann and Bill's son. Mandy, I want you to meet Jonathan. Ann's voice was happy as she came into the bedroom. Jonathan, this is Mandy. Mandy put aside the book she had been reading. Her heart beat a little faster. How do you do, Jonathan? Hi. His voice cracked with enthusiasm and ended up somewhere in his boots. Jonathan cleared his throat and took her extended hand in his somewhat moist one. Mandy had the impression of a tall, gangly boy, his dark hair falling loosely across his forehead, with ruddy cheeks and his mother's very clear blue eyes. He was dressed in his school uniform, but was obviously restless and probably aching to put on more comfortable clothes. His mother had anticipated this. You'll want to change, darling. Will you have some lemonade or something first? I'd love it. He moved to the window and looked eagerly out across the park. His hands were deep in his pockets. Mom, this is super. And then he turned around and whirled to Mandy and said, Don't you like it? Mandy had a hard time finding her voice. Never had she met anyone who exuded so much energy. He dominated the entire room. If only he weren't so tall. She was a little frightened. What I've seen of it, I like. She stammered and wished she could appear calm and not so shy. Perhaps later on, when Mandy's able to get up, you'll show her around the house, John. She might enjoy it. Anne watched both children closely. Yes, it's all right. He stood nonchalantly looking at her. He had a couldn't care less attitude. When would you like to do that? He asked. It won't be possible for a day or two, John. Anne spoke quickly. Maybe tomorrow at the earliest. Okay, I'll see you later then. A remote, casual wave and he was gone, although Mandy felt his presence still lingering in the room. Anne smiled a secret sort of smile. She winked at Mandy and said, I'll be back soon, darling, and then she hurried out after the boy. Mandy was left with a distinctly stunned feeling. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but this boy, this mixture of grace and awkwardness, self-contained yet so full of life, was certainly not what she had anticipated at all. For the rest of the day she lay in bed listening to every footstep that passed her door and praying that Jonathan wouldn't come back into her room. And he didn't. But she could hear him about the house. The place seemed to come alive now that he was home. She could hear Bill laughing in a downstairs room, and the boy explaining something in detail and laughing about it too. It sounded as if he were telling about some escapade at school, so something that happened at school. He was telling his dad about it. At dinner time, she heard the bright chatter and the clink of silver and plates coming from the dining room. It made her feel lonely and sad and left out. Later, when Anne came to sit with her for a while, she lay listlessly against the pillows, quieter than usual. Anne curled up in a chair by the fire and tucked her legs underneath her. So Mandy feels better, but she's still not able to go down and have dinner at the dinner table. Her body doesn't have that much strength. She has to build her strength back. So she still has to eat her meals in her room, even though she's feeling better. It's fun having Jonathan home. Yes. Mandy hesitated, then she bravely lied. He seems very nice. Well, you hardly got a chance to say hello to him at all. Anne smiled at Mandy, then leaned on the arm of her chair and said in a quieter voice, He's rather bouncy, though, isn't he? Oh, well, I think if I were your age, I'd be rather overwhelmed by him. Mandy was surprised. Anne had touched on the very thing that she was feeling. Suddenly, it became easy to talk to Anne. It's just that, I got sort of frightened. I don't know why. And Mandy laughed nervously. Oh, I do, Mandy. You've been waiting to see our son, whom you know I adore, and you must wonder if he'll like you. Then in he comes, full of energy. You feel you should try to like him because he belongs here. It must be very intimidating, especially after your illness. He must make you feel as you if you could never keep up with him. Mandy thought about it, digesting what Anne had just said. It was indeed the way she felt. Just remember one thing, Mandy. Anne looked at her fondly. He's probably just as worried about you. Oh? Why, yes. He's wondering if you like him and how he fits in here with you around, particularly since he's been away at school. She leaned forward and stirred the dying embers of the fire with a poker. It will take time for you to learn to like each other. You mustn't worry if it doesn't happen. You may find you'd rather keep to yourself until you go back to the orphanage. It's not going to upset me or Bill. And then she changed the subject. I wondered if you would like to get up for a little while tomorrow. I thought maybe we could celebrate your getting better and John's being home too, and I'll have dinner together downstairs tomorrow evening. We could really bundle you up warmly, and Samson could light a big fire in the lounge just for an hour or so. Though Mandy would have rather stayed in bed in her comfortable, safe room, she felt she couldn't hurt Anne by refusing the invitation. So she said politely, "Yes, thank you, that would be very nice." And she hoped the evening wouldn't prove to be much of an ordeal, with Jonathan there and everything. That's the end of chapter 37, and there's a little bunny here. So, Mandy isn't really quite sure what to think about Jonathan. He seems to have a lot of energy, and Mandy is sick and tired and doesn't have a lot of energy herself, so she feels overwhelmed by him. And she probably really doesn't know how she fits into the family with Jonathan there. You know, do they want her gone now because Jonathan's back from school, or what? She's just trying to figure it all out and still get better too. So tomorrow night they'll have dinner together downstairs, and they said they'd let her go downstairs for an hour to try it out. So for today, for your writing, I want you to write about, what do you think is going to happen with Jonathan? Do you think her and Jonathan are going to get along? Do you think they're going to fight? Do you think Mandy's going to keep her distance and Jonathan's going to keep his distance? Or do you think they're going to become friends? What do you think is going to happen next with Jonathan and Mandy's relationship? So think about that and write about it. And then I will see you tomorrow for chapter 38.